Thank you very much for joining us for our really exciting webinar today. We are focused on two of our awards, the Peter Usborne Primary School Library of the Year Award and our Enterprise of the Year Award, both of which celebrate and highlight some amazing initiatives and investment in school libraries. And we're really looking forward to sharing the experiences of our shortlisted nominees for each of these awards and talking with them in a bit more detail about what they've been doing and how that can help support reading and learning communities in schools across the country. So we have quite a busy schedule to get through and quite a few guest speakers. So huge thanks to all of them for joining us. I feel incredibly privileged to be able to speak to those who've been shortlisted for these awards, but also to spotlight the amazing value that each of them adds and brings to their school communities, ultimately helping children and young people reach their full potential. So without further ado, our first guest is representing Usborne, who very generously support the Peter Usborne Primary School Library of the Year Award, which recognises a team that works together to ensure their library positively impacts all the pupils in the primary school. And Usborne's sponsorship of this award is a continuation of Peter Usborne, their founder's lifetime commitment to supporting literacy, and we are truly grateful for that support. It's massively, it's a real honour to have his life and work kind of recognised through this award. So Lucy, thank you so much for joining us. Perhaps introduce yourself and let our audience know what it is that you do.
Hi, I'm Lucy and I am the Head of Sales and Marketing for Usborne Community Partnerships, and that's the direct sales division of Usborne Publishing. And we are the sales division that works with schools doing book fairs, sponsored reading events, kind of community book pledges, anything we can do to get more books into schools and to talk to more children about reading. So I am an ex-secondary English teacher, so I know the importance of school libraries and the importance of all children having access to books through their school library that maybe wouldn't otherwise have access to books. And in terms of Usborne, I'm sure you're all quite familiar with Usborne, but it's one of the UK's leading children's publishers, established by the late Peter Usborne over 50 years ago, primarily as a non-fiction publisher, because Peter Usborne believed that children's books weren't exciting, fun, colourful enough. So he decided to set up his own publishing company to rectify this fact, and we've been making amazing books for children ever since. He believed that children could understand anything if it was explained properly to them, and it's this passion that still goes through all our books, all our amazing non-fiction books, and we also have some fantastic fiction as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And can you tell us, what does it mean to Usborne to sponsor this award?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hugely important. Librarians and school libraries are central to helping children to fall in love with reading, and they're probably the place that children can escape, can find themselves, can find characters that make them feel less alone, perhaps, or help them escape from whatever else is going on with their lives. And it's also a place where children can explore the things that interest and excite them the most, and maybe discover the passions that will shape them in the future. And I think school libraries are a big equaliser for children because they're all getting access to the same books.
Brilliant, thank you. And how do you think that reflects Peter's value and commitment to children's literature?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Usborne's quite unusual because we have our direct sales division, which is focused on bringing books to the readers wherever the readers are, and that's quite unusual. Other publishers don't do that. We also have a free books package that all schools can access through our independent Usborne partners, because Peter Usborne believed it was so important that school libraries were full of exciting books and that children had access to them. So I think, yeah, like Usborne was established to get children into reading, to get them excited about reading, to get them excited about like learning more about the world around them. And school libraries are the place that all children can access those books. And that was hugely important to Peter Usborne, and one of the main reasons why Usborne Community Partnerships exists.
Yeah, amazing. And on that note of partnership, a lot of primary libraries are developed through amazing partnership within the school. So those internal partnerships with teachers and the librarian and even the pupils working together. I mean, can you sort of share any thoughts on how that's kind of picked out in this award?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we all know that school libraries are vastly underfunded in the UK, and I think it does take those teams of people and passionate teachers, passionate support staff to make things work for children and to improve their access to those books. And I think the award is a reflection of what can happen when people work together with this shared goal of helping children to have access to a wide range of books and to fall in love with reading. And I think if children don't have choice, it's easy for them not to see themselves as readers. And it's not that they're not readers, it's just they haven't found a book that interests them because maybe they don't have enough choice of different books. And this is where school libraries come in, and why librarians are so important as well, to help children find the book that really resonates with them. And I think like our books are created by lots of different creative brains working together. Otherwise, none of our books would exist. They're never made by one person, they're made by a team. And each member of that team brings something different to that book that's then discovered for a child. So I think it's hugely important to recognise the importance of all school staff in helping children to see themselves as readers, and all school staff in helping children to have access to all those books.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lucy. We really appreciate you being here today, and we'll hear a bit more from you in a minute. But that segues really nicely into our speaking to our first shortlisted school on the Peter Usborne Primary School Library of the Year award. I'm really excited to welcome Reba, librarian at Dorrington Academy, and she is joined by her deputy head Sarah Williamson and head teacher John Harrison. Thanks all of you for being here. And just a little bit of insight, when Reba heard the news about Dorrington's nomination, she said, "Whenever I remember we have been shortlisted for this award, I have to pinch myself. I am extremely honoured that our hard work has been recognised, and I'm incredibly lucky to work in a school with such supportive management and staff who value reading so much." So Reba, just huge congratulations to you and your school. But can you just talk me through a little bit about the support that your library receives from senior leadership and teachers from across the school? Because that really came across in your application. So how important has that been to you in building this successful school library?
The support's been fundamental. The support has been unwavering from the beginning. My SLT are fabulous. There's nothing that you can't ask them and they won't try and do for you. So they came up with the idea of having a library.
Yeah, I think we just to jump in a little bit, I suppose, with Reba. It was for us. It was about having a high quality, curriculum aligned library. It was something that we I suppose, evaluated and felt that we could improve on. And in a total truth, we tried to do it ourselves as a leadership team and with the literacy leads. And it became very clear to us that we lacked someone with Reba's skill set, hence appointing Reba as a full-time librarian and raising the profile of it. And it's Reba that has transformed, what we do here. She's definitely got those skills and that passion that comes through for our children. So, yeah.
Amazing. And what was the remit that you gave Reba when you sort of said, right, we want you to do this? What was your kind of ultimate aim and outcome? I mean, you talk about something that was curriculum aligned. What were you hoping to achieve through investing in the library and indeed in Reba?
It's one of those that really snowballed, if I'm totally honest, because it started off small, like I say, with that curriculum aligned reference library
right,
to support the children learning. And then the children said, but we want to take the books home. So then we got into the lending library, and Reba went away, worked with the children, the other staff, to audit all the books we had, what books they wanted, and really sort of grew that. And then we invested all the money in purchasing those books. Then we had to buy more copies because the children literally emptied the shelves, and they were everywhere you turned in the school. There was children reading.
Yeah, this is what I mean by whenever I went to the SLT with a request, it was basically granted. So this is our reference library.
This is how it all started.
Yeah.
We wanted high quality fiction and non-fiction text that would supplement our curriculum, the whole curriculum. That's how it started.
And then the children wanted the same kind of books here, but we want to also increase the exposure they had to different authors. So I liaised with the school council. They spoke to pupils in classes. We had pupil voice going on, and the pupils were fundamentally telling us this is what we want. They wanted all the popular books like Bunny vs. Monkey and Dogman, but they also wanted new books. And the children teach you something new every day. They come and tell me, oh, have you heard of this author? Sometimes I haven't. And I'll be honest, and I say, no, I haven't. We're looking to getting it. And the pupil librarians have been fantastic. Once we set up the library,
Reba couldn't do it on her own.
Yeah.
So that was the next step. We needed more staff to help make it.
Everyone always says thanks to me. The children always say, oh, thank you, Miss. I say, well, thank Mr. Harrison for the extra Dogman books. We have a long waiting list of Dogman books, and thanks to Mr. Harrison, the children have less time to wait for the Dogman books. And the teachers have been so instrumental in me helping me to run this library. I couldn't do it without the teachers.
And how do you I mean, it's really amazing hearing your excitement and what you've done, but I mean, I think, do you I mean, John, obviously from your perspective, clearly because it's being led by SLT and yourself, Sarah, that does help galvanize the wider school community, but how has that worked in terms of getting all the teachers engaged and kind of on board? Because clearly, taking children to the library, there's a time scenario there, making time for reading. How have you kind of gone about building that into the thinking and the sort of approaches that you're using?
I think as I sort of said before, the whole thing has snowballed, and teachers have been on board with it from the start because they're all passionate about children reading. I think that's one of our real strengths as a school, and as it has grown, our staff have grown with it, and they love bringing their class over. They love the conversations. They make recommendations. And as I was saying before, it's got to the stage where everywhere you turned in the school, a child was reading a book at lunchtime, and it was lovely. So we had to build reading areas on the playground where they could sit and read.
Amazing. So it's like supply and demand for
exactly. Yeah,
that's brilliant.
The children couldn't get enough of the library. We were opening at break times, lunch times, before school. The children asked, and then we tried to fulfill their wishes.
Sounds incredible. And Sarah, I can hear you sort of saying, you talk about impact. What impact do you think it's had doing this?
I think the staff could see from us our vision and the passion that we all had for it, and they could see the impact it had on the children straight away. I think for them it was, wow, look at the engagement that we've got across the school. Even those year 6 children moving on to secondary school, and they sort of bought into the vision as well, and they've been key, because without them and planning, they incorporate the non-fiction text. They come over here, they plan sessions. They're on board. They see the impact, and they're integral to making it work and having that vision for the children.
Yeah, and it's not only just an educational impact; it's affected the children socially. We've had children. One pupil, she barely spoke. But then one day she just walked up to the library, just knocked on the door when she wasn't meant to be, then asked for a reading pack that we were giving out through the National Literacy Trust. And then after that, just every morning, can I be a librarian? Can I please be a librarian? And it's just given them so much confidence. I've had pupils who are very shy, and they're very shy. They feel like they find a voice. They've got this responsibility, and they've such pride. Miss, can I actually tell that child to be quiet? And yes, you can. You're a librarian. So the responsibility that the children have got when they've been a pupil librarian is just amazing. They love through SLT. given them lanyards, badges. They just all love the little perks as well, but mainly it's the role. They love being
and that goes home as well.
Yeah.
So the parents understand the importance that the library has for us here. So as soon as the children start in nursery, we introduce them to the library. We involve the parents. We offer stay and read sessions. As soon as children start school, staff will model storytelling sessions. You know, we've got our local library tours that had very, very limited hours, and it was quite clear to us that the children weren't used to visiting. That was shut down. So we sort of took that and thought, well, we can do something here. So it's for us educating the parents as well, and parents being on board with how important reading is to everything. It's key. And the parents love coming. They love coming to the stay and read sessions. The staff love modelling, storytelling for parents. We could go on. There's so much.
I know, to be honest, it sounds amazing. I mean, one of my questions was about parent engagement, but I can see, you know, parents and carers obviously really engaged, which is brilliant.
To sort of sum this up, it's like, as Reba said right at the start, we're absolutely delighted, as you can probably tell, to be nominated for this award. But in truth, we feel like we've already won with everything that we've got in the school. So this is a bonus.
Wow, it sounds amazing, and just massive congratulations. You've obviously put loads of work in, and Reba, you've obviously got some, you know, magic dust there. You're going to have to share some of that with the rest of us, because the fact that you've got SLT engaged and parent engagement and pupil voice, which I absolutely love. It's so, I know in my own experience as a librarian, it was so important to listen to pupils and get their feedback, but engage them and give them a sense of agency and, you know, sort of ownership of the school library. And clearly you're doing that in spades. So but anyway, well, listen, lovely to meet you all. I'm sure we could talk for hours, but just massive congratulations on your shortlisting, and we're going to now move on to our next guest. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Right, so speaking of pupil library assistants, our next guests come from Upton Meadows, and Jane Rue is librarian, and she's joined by Claire Searing, her head teacher, and they're going to chat to us about their project. And one aspect of this is actually focused on training library helpers. So share a little bit more about how you go about engaging your pupils and what you're asking them to do, and how you kind of ensure consistency as well, because obviously that was, I remember that as a challenge. You know, you recruit a cohort and then they move up a year, and then you recruit some more. So how do you kind of keep that momentum going?
Fab. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. Just to reiterate, you know, what our colleagues have just been saying. We're extremely proud and excited to be sitting in this webinar and have been nominated for this award, and it's fascinating, inspiring listening to other people talk about their libraries with the same kind of passion as we do. So we serve an area of quite significant deprivation, and for us, you know, the library's always been a really integral part of the school, but something you've always had library helpers, but something that we've really focused on in the last sort of 2 or 3 years is really developing our pupil leadership across the school, giving our pupils a really powerful, meaningful voice rather than a tokenistic one, and encouraging our children to aspire to be leaders in their own learning and their own lives. And that's taken a variety of different forms, one of which has been sort of, I suppose, the up-levelling, the promotion of sort of the kinds of roles and responsibilities that we now give our children within the library. Our children love our library. It's physically in the centre of our school. It's a very, you can't get from A to B in our school without walking through the library, which is a kind of pro and a con. But our children love being in there. They want to be in there, and they want desperately to help. It's such a sought after job to be a librarian, and it made me chuckle when Reba said about the librarians sort of being like, am I allowed to tell them to be quiet? you are this is your library. And engaging like I say with that pupil voice across our whole sort of school environment has been a really successful drive forwards with our children. And I'll let Jane talk a little bit more specifically about the library and how she's built that role into something so much more meaningful and high profile, I suppose.
Amazing.
I think I've just, I suppose, prepared for this by thinking about, okay, how did it all start? It started in the early days with taking that enthusiasm for books that came quite naturally to the children, and trying to formalize a process of recruiting them. I used the SLA guidelines for a while to structure their training. We did call outs to any children who were interested, and of course got lots of interest back. Even held interviews at one point. As time has gone on, I've sort of settled upon maybe a less formal approach. Time constraints partly, but to be pragmatic about the whole recruitment and training business. If I spent so long on the fundamentals of or the very details of training, I felt I was losing their interest a little bit. So from it has become what's practical, what's helpful to the children, what's needed. So I have in the past taught Dewey. I've gone into the details of the decimal system and whatever over time, and we still do shelve nonfiction by Dewey, but now the nonfiction sequence is coloured as well as numbered, which for the children makes it a lot simpler. Interestingly, today in the library, the children, I was wanting their feedback on the library, and they were saying, we love the way that it's organised. We love the way that it's simple to find things. And that's important for the library helpers because limited time to train them. And they're not going to go into the decimal places of the Dewey system. They're going to look first and foremost for the colour, and then get it in the right place by looking at the sort of books that are on the shelves, using the number as well. With fiction, we shelve by author surname. But I've also, over time, added a genre label, a picture to the book. So we've made it more visual. So what helps the library assistants also helps their peers and the rest of the children in the school. So I think it's been important to make that change really to something more visual, more simple. So I do go into the training of where to find books, how to navigate the library as one of the first things we do. I've got a step-by-step process for those who maybe are thinking, yes, we can start off with library helpers. So my steps have been asking for that initial show of interest. And we draw our library helpers from year 5 and 6. But having said that, we've just started off with classroom book monitors, and I'm hoping that will feed in those who maintain that level of responsibility and maturity towards looking after their books in the classroom can then go on.
It's like succession planning. We're going that highbrow here. We're going succession planning.
Succession planning. I love that. I think that's great. And it's really nice to have those different levels of engagement, isn't it? And actually, I did the exact same thing with my primary libraries. I used colour and numbers. And I think that ultimately we want to engage children in reading. We don't want to blow their minds with decimal systems, which obviously can come later. So the combination works really well because they get used to the scenario of numbers, but ultimately you want them to be able to engage with
I think
what's
they
on the
get
shelf.
used to the scenario as well of like the organisation and like actually you don't just shove them on the shelves anywhere, and actually why is that important? Unpicking with children why that matters. But yes, I'll carry on back to you.
So we're still instilling in them that sense of this is a responsible role, and it's one that they have to show that they are going to commit to. So I say that right from the get-go, that this is a commitment for one term at least. So if you put yourselves forward, I'll train you, but you are committing to turn up one lunchtime a week to be trained.
Have you,
of course, sorry.
I was going to say, have you seen that that sense of commitment? Have you seen that make a difference to one student in particular? I mean, do you have sort of those examples in terms of, we talk about leadership skills and we talk about it making a difference. Have you seen that in the pupils that you've sort of worked with as library helpers?
I can go back to one in particular. I mean, there are lots of examples. from our existing and past library helpers. But one boy stands out. I'll call him Aaron. He was recruited in year 5, put himself forward, very keen to be a library helper. And
wouldn't be your typical choice.
Not at all.
If you understand what I'm saying.
Not at all.
Yes.
But we're desperate to do it.
Yes, he was. And he was on the send register. So yes, he came, he did his training. He would get wound up sometimes, especially you've got a queue of classmates waiting to get their book scanned. It's all a bit rushed sometimes, or it can be. However much you say, be patient to the children. You know, sometimes it's not always how you want it to be. But he kept his cool. And he continued to be really keen about the role, and actually showed that he could be trusted in that role too. He sort of grew into it, yes. So the other thing that struck me about him was that he then really took a delight in showing other children the ropes. So once he sort of learnt, he wanted to sort of almost prove what he knew, or to share what he knew, passing on what he'd learnt. And now I'm thinking, I'm hoping it stood him in good stead for the secondary school.
I'm sure it will have done. I'm sure it will have done.
Yeah,
I know I've seen that myself, definitely.
It boosted his confidence anyway.
Yeah. And what do you think, I mean, just finally, what do you think, what do you think it does for you as a librarian and kind of in your school in terms of having that connection with pupils, in terms of, you know, building relationship, but also just helping raise awareness around the library and what it can do for children?
I think it's really important. It's really important to keep in touch with what the children themselves are enjoying, because there's no end. There's a fantastic range of books, new books coming online all the time, being published, and I could just go by what the latest recommendations are on various websites, but I need to be knowing what our children enjoy reading. So the pupil librarians are one of several ways in which I can engage with the children as well. And in purely practical terms, it helps me out if I've got 4 boxes of books of a lunchtime that need scanning back before the classes come in the afternoon. And there comes a point where I'm still there, but I can leave them to get on with it, to scan the books back in, and with me to shelve this whole pile of returns, which is
definitely a very practical help. But one of the
Yes.
things you said about your role, actually, and I'm just looking at a quote here, that you obviously been doing what you've been doing for 9 years, which is amazing. But you talk about the fact that, you know, even just helping them find the right book, it can be a really simple act that's the beginning of a journey that could last a lifetime. So I would imagine in your work, you've obviously impacted on a lot of young people and potentially their lifetime, which is an amazing reflection. So yeah, but listen, thank you so much for sharing your insight. We need to skip on to our next speaker, but I really appreciate you both being here, and huge congratulations on your shortlisting for this award, and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So pupil library assistants can be a really brilliant way at spreading the word about library and engaging the wider word about the library, but engaging the wider community. And our next speaker is Verity Robinson from Mangotsfield Primary, and she's also shortlisted for this award, and she's going to be sharing some insight into engaging with the whole school community. So Verity, tell us tell us about some of your reading initiatives and events that have reached out to the wider school community.
I just have to start by saying thank you, Victoria, for you and your team for including me for this nomination. It's so lovely to be included with a group of passionate librarians and people working in schools, and people who also care about shelving books in the right places. That's brilliant. I started in Mangotsfield 2.5 years ago, and the library wasn't really being used at all by anyone in the community, I would say. So straight away, the first thing I did was initiate fortnightly library sessions. So I had our SLTs backing, we timetabled every class came to the library for what we call library lessons, which really added value, I think, to the children coming down. So it wasn't They do also come in their break times and lunch times, but this was a dedicated time. They would come with their whole class. And I always start the sessions by speaking to them, either to read a story and encourage that reading for pleasure, or we do activities as well and boost that information literacy skills. So they have the knowledge then to find the books, find their way around the library, and get to become that, I always say, about lifelong library users, so that they know how to use our library, so they're prepared for secondary school and using public libraries as well. And I try and link in with events that might be happening throughout the year. And then the library, we like to extend beyond the classroom. So we bought some reading sheds, and we have 3 in each of our different playgrounds. So we're a 3 form entry school, so we're quite a big school. And the Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 playground have their own reading sheds, which are manned and opened by our student librarians. And it really was fantastic to see children outside reading and opening up that idea of they don't just have to sit at a desk upright uncomfortably. They can get their books out, lie on the grass, and have that communal shared love of reading. We've put lots of short books in there, so there's lots of graphic novels, so they can actually read them in a lunchtime. And they're always asking, when are you going to put more Dogmans in the reading sheds? And it was amazing to see that we had Ofsted terrifyingly come to visit us last term, and they spotted the children reading, and that was mentioned in our report as well, that they saw that reading was beyond the walls of the school. One of the initiatives we started to try and get parents engaged with the library and donating books was we started a birthday books project, where we invited the children, alongside bringing sweets or chocolates for their birthdays, to donate a book to the library. And these will have little book plates in them that say, this book was donated by this person on their 5th birthday, for example. And we have a wish list with the local bookshop. So we do say, if you've got a book at home you'd like to donate, that would be great. But then it meant we could have the ones we were hoping for, but perhaps didn't have the budget for, could then go in this wish list, and children would be able to choose them to donate. We also try to encourage some of our wider staff team to get involved with reading. And last year we launched a thing where the sports coaches actually read to some of the children as well, which was so good, because I often find, without being too stereotypical, that the children who are interested in sports tend to be ones who haven't quite found the right books for them. And it was a really nice mix. And we actually now, I've got a really good relationship with some of the sports coaches, who I must admit didn't get to know particularly well because our paths never crossed before. And now we ordered a lot of sports related books over the summer. So I've got one of our team is running a rugby club, and one of the boys, who wasn't the keenest reader before, has borrowed some of these rugby books and is already telling the sports coaches, I've learnt this, I know nothing about rugby, but I've learnt this new skill, or I've learnt this fact about the game, and they've been sharing that together, and that's been coming back to me, which has been so lovely to see. So at the end of their PE lessons, if there's time, if they've got a class before the end of the day, they're actually reading stories to them and sharing that. And I think it's really great to see, more than just me, who's obviously a very bookish person working in the library, and more than just their class teachers, getting them into reading as well.
You've obviously spent some time building relationships with your colleagues, with your teaching colleagues, which I know is really important in the success of the school library. Actually, in my own experience, and I can see that display behind you, we are reader teachers. So obviously you've done that. What would be your kind of, how have you gone about developing those relationships? Possibly there's a bit of boldness there, I think, maybe in suggesting some of those new ideas.
Definitely. And there's always teachers who maybe take a little bit longer, or have to see it being trialled in other classes first. I think being a librarian can be oftentimes quite a lonely job when you're the only one in the school. We're a really big school here, so everyone's got their teacher team already. So I've just had to really put myself out there, to be honest. I make sure I'm in the staff room when teachers are having their lunch, when I'm not running lunch clubs. I share a weekly email to staff as well. So just whether there's, so when it was National Poetry Day, I shared about that, or when it was Dyslexia Awareness Week, I said, did you know we have these books in the library? Just to try and keep teachers aware of what we have, what's going on, and not forget what I'm doing as well. And then hopefully that can help the wider team. But I've had a really supportive reading lead here, and I work with our English hubs that we have. So we've got that kind of extra element of support coming in through them. And I've had to hide away in our office today because our library is on the edge of the school. So all of the children pass it because there's not a door. It's sort of off the corridor. And we currently have parents' evening happening at the moment.
Sorry.
So I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining.
With books instead.
So just just a quick question around library stock, because you've mentioned about having different types of reads to engage different student pupils and their interests, so whether it's sport or potentially those lighter reads maybe where they don't take so long so they can read them across a lunch break. But how important is it, to have that kind of library stock that enables all children to access reading in your library and through your library?
I think that's one of the things I'm most passionate about, is making sure the library is as inclusive as possible and getting everyone involved, and developing those relationships, I think, with children, so you get to know them as individual readers. So if I find out a child like that boy who got the rugby book, oh, you're doing rugby club, well, come and borrow some books about the rugby then. And I think it was Reba who was saying about getting pupil voice. So giving children ownership over the library is really important. When we opened up the library, I had a book suggestions box to start off with. And throughout that, anytime a child says now, oh, can we get this book for the library? I've got a library wish list that I keep adding to. And last year, especially, we noticed non-fiction wasn't really being borrowed that much. We had quite an old collection. So I did a big vote on the wall and gave each child a sticker to put on the topic they most wanted to see, whether that was sports. Pets actually came up trumps. So we ordered lots and lots of books for non-fiction, and now, they're on display. These are the books you asked for, and they're being borrowed since we've opened the library up again, which is great. And then I just try and focus as well when we are ordering books, making sure that we're curating a really inclusive stock. So we are covering different races, religions, neurodiversity, LGBT families, but also some of those stories where children can see lives reflected. So whether it's books about bereavement, for example, or poverty, that some of those trickier situations are still seen in books as well. We're also a C of E school, so I've made sure we've updated our books on Christianity, but then I found it really important that we have other religions and festivals are celebrated too. So we really try and highlight those throughout the year. And like I said before, we have a range of dyslexia friendly books from Barrington Stoke. So I've shared those for Dyslexia Awareness Week, and we call them super readables. So I say that they're just shorter reads, they've got lots of pictures, anyone can read them. But then those certain children that you get to know, or the teachers say, oh, that one's struggling a bit with reading, and then I can point them in that direction as well. So it's something we're continuously working on. And my next project is to try and get some dual language books for our EAL learners, but I know they're quite hard to find, and they're
absolutely. Well, they were. I mean, it was a while ago I was in the library, but yes, they were. It was a challenge. But Lucy, just to bring Lucy back just for a moment, just to comment on stock development, because obviously Verity's been describing, and actually some of our other shortlisted nominees have been talking about pupil voice and things. How do you kind of build that into your thinking when you're thinking about how you support schools with stock development and sort of that diversity of range and different needs and things?
So we, as a sales division, try to go to quite a lot of events. So we have a monthly management meeting, and our sales division will report back on what our sellers are saying about what children are saying they want. They want books on in schools. We are acutely aware of representation in books. I think fiction is always a challenge because it depends what authors are writing, and I think there are a lot of sensitivities around own voices and making sure that voices are accurately represented in books. But certainly our non-fiction, we try to have characters that reflect all the different children that might be reading those books. And I think it is really apparent when you see children at events like finding a book that where the character is like them. You see it from front covers, actually. If a child spots a book where the character on the book looks like them, they get so excited. Or other children will spot someone that looks like someone in their class, and they'll be dragging all the other children over to see this book. So I think we do take a lot of feedback from children, from librarians, from teachers. A lot of our booksellers are also part-time teachers, so they teach and they sell books, or if they're not a part-time teacher, they used to be a teacher and then they now sell books instead. So I think talking to children is the biggest thing. It was interesting Verity saying about pets, because that's something we have definitely noticed. Pets, sports, pets and sports, although history seems to be on the rise for us. So I think it is listening to what children are asking for. We then feed back, because we're an independent publisher. All our books are written in-house apart from our fiction, which we buy in. So that does give us the flexibility to actually look at what children are interested in and what they say they like, and try to recreate that in a book. And we play around a lot with the different forms of books. So we will do flat books on topics like the periodic tables. So even more challenging topics are like display more interactively, or we've got a series of books called 24 Hours, which are like a graphic novel, but it takes you through a particular period in time, like the Stone Age, or it might take you to space or the Arctic. So you're exploring that world or that period in history through the eyes of a character, but it's more graphic novel style. So we're always adapting, and it is based a lot around what children say they like and they're interested in, which often isn't necessarily what you think they'll be interested in.
Definitely. I do remember that when we used to have those conversations. Thank you so much, Lucy. Thank you, Verity, for your contribution. And thank you to everybody shortlisted for the Peter Usborne Primary School Library of the Year Award. I am very glad I'm not on the judging panel and I don't have to make the call, because I will find it very challenging. I would find it really challenging. But now I'm really pleased that we're going to be talking about the Enterprise of the Year Award, which celebrates one-off or progressive projects which contribute towards reading and literacy in schools. So it could include a refurbishment or a smaller scale project or reading project or book event. And this award is generously sponsored by Reading Cloud. And we have 3 inspiring projects on the shortlist this year, and all of them are joining us shortly. But first of all, I'm really pleased to welcome Ricky from Reading Cloud. Ricky, would you like to just introduce yourself briefly and perhaps just share with us what it means to Reading Cloud to sponsor this award?
Absolutely. And thank you, Victoria, for and your team for inviting us. And yes, hi everyone. So I am the head of customer engagement. So I'm responsible for sales and customer retention. So at Reading Cloud, the team and I, we know that librarians and literacy leads are the heartbeat of the reading community. And our goal is simple: to give you the tools and support that you need to spark the love of reading that spreads throughout the whole school. Because when librarians lead the way, amazing things happen, as we hear and as we've been seeing from the schools today. So we're delighted to support the SLA Enterprise Award. The award recognises and celebrates the vital contributions school libraries make to champion literacy and reading within the school's community, and to encourage a lifelong love of reading. So thank you, and we are proud to be supporting everyone in regards to this.
Well, thank you so much, Ricky. We really appreciate your support, and I know how passionate you are about school libraries and your team, and it's been a pleasure working with you on this. So without further ado, let's meet one of our first shortlisted schools. So Catherine Duncan is the creative learning leader at Homewood House School. And when asked about being shortlisted, the Homewood House team said, like all schools, our most limiting resource is time, and the recognition really helps with future and reinvestment of time and resources to keep the area thriving for our young learners. So we've talked about the Enterprise Award briefly, what it is, but it really spotlights innovation in school libraries. And I know from my own experience as a librarian, you had to innovate on a daily basis, almost on an hourly basis sometimes, in order to capture those children and young people and engage with staff. So Catherine, first of all, congratulations and welcome. So please share a little bit about your library, which I understand is called the Creative Learning Hub.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and it's a real honour to be nominated, particularly, excuse me, when you're doing something a little bit different. The starting point probably is that I'm not called a librarian, so my job title is actually Creative Learning Leader, and my remit is to engage the whole school population, obviously focusing on pupils, in a variety of creative activities that are linked to the literary events that happen throughout the year, but also cultural events and whatever seems fit. So it is a different role, and it does reflect my skill set, which my background was 15 years working in graphic design. I then did a PGCE in secondary art and design in order to do curriculum development, which I did with schools and government agencies and museums and galleries. So that's my kit bag that I came with, and the head tasked me, having created the role in 2022, with please can you bring this multi-use space to life, run the library, but also please can you come up with a variety of really creative activities to bring the place alive. The place is quite unusual in that it's purpose-built. It was built in 2017, and there was somebody in post before me for 2 years back then who had a different skill set. They were more kind of literacy based. They were with an English teaching background. So their activities tended to be more about critical thinking. So the place was the library, but had got sort of reasonably dormant. And I think the potential was there in that the space had been created by the architects to be multi-use, have lots of opportunity. And so our new head in 2022 wanted to bring this reality to life. But I had a completely open slate. Nobody had a plan. It was much more, can you come up and figure this out? So one day into my induction, our deputy head, whose office actually I'm sitting in, I'm afraid it's not the library because that's being used, but said to me, so what are you doing for a Roald Dahl event next week, 3 days time across the whole school? Which was a little bit of a shock because I was literally day 2. So thinking on my feet, it's worth saying that I am part-time, so I have to be really efficient and really strategic about where I put my time. So what I decided was to focus on creativity and about innovation and being imaginative. So I ran a whole school competition all the way from nursery up to we go up to year 8. This could be done at home. It could also be done in school, so it was inclusive. It was around using easily accessible materials, which could be, recycled, easy to hand. And they were to come up with a really imaginative, fantastic lollipop and name it with some kind of gobblefunk title, so Stupendous Fizzle Pop, and it would then create some display because the room was pretty dim. And it hadn't got anything sort of vibrant. So by a week later, I had over 100 entries all around the Learning Hub, which we call the Creative Learning Hub. And it was really exciting. I also engaged the kitchen staff to judge the competitions because I wanted to reach out to all the different members of the staff in some way. I also did a sort of find the golden ticket thing on staff lanyards. So again, all the teachers were really excited to be able to have a lanyard. There were questions they had to ask around books. So we were looking at, you couldn't just get a golden ticket, you had to answer a question. But overall, it gave me a mechanism to work with. I ran workshops within our space also so that children could make these lollipops within the library space. And also then it was something to tell parents about and market through the newsletter. But this quite quickly provided me a framework to see what worked. And children really love making. And my feeling generally, because I was in the Creative Learning Hub, making is at the heart of a lot of the activity that I run. So it will potentially be rooted in some kind of book or National Storytelling Week or Neurodiversity Week, but they make something, and I use that as a vehicle to be able to focus on sometimes some quite challenging concepts, but by the nature of creating something that reflects back to them It allows them to imagine, to innovate, to question, but also walk away with something, and so immediately take stuff out into the school environment, and also provides display.
Oh, sorry. What I was going to say, what difference do you think that makes to their engagement with stories? I mean, obviously they might be making, but how do you see that making a difference to their engagement with stories and reading, the things that you do, that sort of creative inspiration?
Well, I think it's very inclusive. So there's a lot of children who say, I don't read, or I'm reluctant to read, but they're not reluctant to make. So I run library sessions. So we have focused library sessions. These are during the drop-in break time activity. So it's another layer. It is very much a large part of my role is to do this. As I said, my job title is not librarian, but alongside all this, there is a functioning library with library sessions. But this provides a very vibrant way in for everybody to engage. I'd work with different departments. So say the head of languages will come to me saying, we've got European Languages Day came up, what can you do? National Poetry Day, I work with the English department, and just recently worked all the way across from year one all the way up, but working with the teachers in the classroom. So I will suggest, let's do this year, and they deliver it in the classroom. So it doesn't all just happen in that space in the Learning Hub. It also happens beyond.
It's like a springboard, isn't it? And you're creating,
Absolutely.
like you said, you're creating a template for that kind of engagement and kind of cultivating curiosity around imagination, which is so important. And I love the fact that you can kind of engage with staff, even if it's not in the space, but you've got that as a sort of, well, they've got you as an amazing resource, to be honest. Let's face it, it sounds incredible.
I see it like an octopus, and we have just got into Galvin in as an octopus. It's a bit like having the body in
new logo.
Well, we've got a body in the Creative Learning Hub and all the tentacles around the school. Talking of logo, that was one of the first things I did was design, brand it, because it had been dormant. I wanted people from day one to know something's going to happen here and it's going to be different. So there is a logo that's created out of letters that you can find all around the environment or make out of sticks, and they're all put together, and it says Creative Learning Hub. Immediately as children walk past, they know things happened in this space. But as I said about other activities like Neurodiversity Week, they made glasses that had, how do you see the world? They could put in different lenses, they could decorate. They walked out into the school, and a child had just been diagnosed dyslexic. They got some tinted glasses they didn't want to wear, and immediately saw all their friends wearing these tinted spectacles and were like, oh, well, that's all right, that's fine. So it has, there's a roll on of being able to let things travel outside the space that can be very effective and very useful.
Amazing. Okay, thank you so much, Catherine. Really lovely to hear from you, and congratulations on your shortlisting. So I'm going to move on now to welcome Colette Wade. So in 2024, the library at Thomas à Becket Infant School was cramped and uninspiring, and having identified a new spacious area place in their library at the heart of the school, Deputy Head Colette was determined to achieve her vision of raising a love of reading. So Colette, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously some of the things that have been described are all brilliant if you've got a big fat budget and you can do what you want, but you obviously didn't necessarily have that. So you had the challenge of fundraising. So share with us how you went about raising funds.
Thank you, Victoria. And again, what an absolute privilege it's to be on this call. And I think, I echo everyone's sentiments. Just being nominated for us as a school is just like we're over the moon. I think I described it as like the project, the way it all came together was just getting people to achieve above their potential for the benefit of our school. So how I kind of was involved in that, very much the project initially was driven by our PTA, and they were always very passionate about running projects within the school for our children. And they would speak to the children, get their voice about areas of the school that they wanted to develop. And, we're an infant school, so reading, books, it's at the heart of everything we do. And our library was just not in a good state. And so, unsurprisingly, the children were like, we want a new library, and they had so many amazing ideas about what they wanted incorporated into the library. So I think fundamentally, I would say in terms of fundraising, having we found as a school having a focus really, really helped. And then sharing that vision, the purpose, the reasons why We did a promotional video with the children talking about why they wanted a new library. It involved our student council, etc. So the children's voice was very prominent, and that helps bring on board the community, parents and carers, etc. And then I think a really important point to make is fundraising isn't always about money. Fundraising is also about people's time. And that was a really, really important thing. And also their skills and honestly, like our community as well, just pulled together so magnificently. And I think it's just about being transparent all the way. Like, this is the figure we're working towards. I would definitely say you need to do your research prior to advertising that figure so that it's realistic, but equally be very open-minded. And there are so many initiatives within local communities that you don't realise are happening. So I obviously don't want to advertise particular companies, but for example, there was a company where if you go on the first day of the month and you show that you're from a school, they provide up to £250 worth of resources. So for example, we got all our paint because we had to do like an undercoat of the room from this particular company. Lots of companies pay for their staff to give up time to come in, like to help schools. So we had a team that came in to paint for us, but that was their way of giving back to the community. And then there's other things like, I would say in terms of the fundraising for the school, we made it as accessible and easy for our community as possible, particularly our children. One of the most successful things we did was we ran a sponsored event called Get Your Move On. And basically all the children had to do was move. It was over a holiday. And then the sponsorship that came in, it didn't matter like what came in, they were all involved. But obviously some of the donations were just like, the sponsorship was just amazing. So there was all these like things that just culminated and came together. Another thing that we did utilise, so there were within the community like companies that donated prizes for raffles. And so raffles, equally very easy to organise, but generated a huge amount of income. I would say then in terms of the fundraising with local businesses and things, we never asked. We didn't go out to them and ask, can you donate to our school? We went out and spoke to them about getting quotes, etc. And then as soon as they heard about the project, they were like, oh, we want to give more. And if I'm being really, really honest, our vision at the start of the project was to have like a beach scene for the library. And when we spoke to the vinyl company, they basically said they were going to donate 10 hours of design for the project, because he was like, oh my gosh, this space is incredible. Like, can I have free reign to do this amazing design for the children? And it was literally like, absolutely, you can. And then it just turned into like, the space is absolutely stunning.
And so, I know obviously what you're describing sounds incredible, but I know it wasn't always easy. So how did you stay motivated and keep everyone galvanized? Because there's quite a lot. It's quite a lot to bring a community with you, and especially when it comes to money, that can sometimes be a challenge. Obviously, as you've said, you can ask for time and stuff as opposed to actual money. But how did you keep going?
So, be really, really honest. We got to a stage. So, this is probably a common problem. We were a very large school, but there was a core group on the PTA, and they can't do everything. And we did get to a stage where we weren't sure. We were really worried that we couldn't carry on with the project, and that's kind of then where we rallied. We wrote a very heartfelt letter to our school community, and then like all these people came forward, and we had like almost like an emergency meeting. And then I think it was just looking at it through a different perspective. Let's have a timeline of what's going to happen. Where are the skills? How can people help, but they don't have to commit to like weeks. They can just do an afternoon where they come in and paint or, help move books, etc. Always saying thank you, showing appreciation. Like, we don't do enough of that at times. Inviting people in, showing them the space. They suddenly became very, very invested in what we were doing. And then equally, by going out to the community, all these offers came forward. Like, we realised that we had a family within the school that had a carpet company, and then they were like, well, we'd like to make a donation for the carpet, etc. And I would say, in terms of like my role within that, was leading by example. You've got to get stuck in, you've got to show the passion and share the passion. I think the best thing we did is we kept it an absolute secret from the whole school community till we unveiled it. So we had, we were able to lock the door of the space. We covered the whole outside windows with black bin liners. And then anyone that came into the room had to use the passcode rubber ducky to get into the room on a walkie-talkie. And then we did a big reveal on the first day back in September. And we did a promotional video for the children where they got to the doors and then they came into the space. And equally, we did it with all the people that had contributed. And when I say there were tears, and
oh my gosh, it sounds like whatever it's called, the DIY program, which of course has now gone up in my head. It sounds like that.
A little bit like that. Yeah. So it honestly went beyond what we ever dreamed of. And I think for me, the children's reaction on that first day was just, I mean, we were moved to tears. It was amazing.
Sounds incredible. Well, listen, I'm sorry. I know we keep going, but we're nearly out of time, and we've got another shortlisted candidate. But listen, just huge congratulations. It sounds incredible. What an amazing achievement. Yeah, I'd love to come and visit sometime. Thank you so much, Colette. Really lovely to meet you. So we've heard how invaluable PTA organisations can be, but what about when parents sometimes maybe don't necessarily engage? How do you then kind of deal with that? How do you then engage with parents and kind of get the whole community going? Nearly losing the will to live. I'm sorry, I can't speak apparently now. But listen, I know we're nearly out of time. Do stay with us if you can. We now are going to speak to Victoria Edwards, last but not least, librarian at Allens Junior School. A self-confessed reluctant reader, Victoria said she would never have imagined she'd become a school librarian, so she's very pleased to be nominated for this project. So Victoria, congratulations on your nomination. Your Big Read project is a community initiative and it sounds just incredible, so share a little bit more about that.
Thank you so much for having me. Just to clarify, former reluctant reader. As a child, I was very reluctant.
Sorry, I don't know how to read that. I beg my pardon.
So the Big Read is a social book club, a free book club for pupils from schools in our community. We're an independent school, and the project is for our local state schools, and it's completely free for schools to take part. So we send free copies of the chosen book to the schools, and the schools choose children to take part. They come on the day and the author is there. It's like an author event, but it happens at the weekend, so it's really social and much more relaxed than in term time. And the author does a talk. We have some activities based on the talk, some drinks and snacks, because obviously that's an essential part of any book club. And then the children can ask questions of the author, they can have their book signed, and they get a little goodie bag when they go home. So it's sort of like a book club party at the weekend for local schools. Yeah.
But you invite your parents to stay. So tell us a little bit about the parent engagement.
Yeah, so this really honestly started off from a safeguarding perspective. Because the children are coming from other schools and we don't have all of the safeguarding information for these children, it really was essential that an adult stayed with each child. So the adults sit in the room while this is going on, which started off, as I said, as a safeguarding thing, but we realized very quickly that it was a real positive, and the parents, just anecdotally, they often start off on their phone at the start of the event, and then about 5 minutes into the author talk, they're sort of all drawn in, and by the end, they're all sort of getting involved, and it's really lovely. They sort of chat amongst themselves, different parents from different schools. They're chatting with their children, and I think it's lovely for them to see their children in action, asking questions of the author, just seeing how much their children enjoy the book, love reading, and it just gives them some ideas of what reading could look like outside of a classroom, or outside of just, as you say, reading aloud for 20 minutes to your parent. It just gives them a different view, I think, of reading, and it's been really positive having them there.
What do you think that slightly more, what changes have you made to create that sort of sociable atmosphere? Because I can, from your application, you mentioned you deliberately arranged the school and include icebreakers and quizzes and low stakes activities. So how do you go about doing that?
It was really important for me because I think we all know that one of the barriers to reading for pleasure is children feeling that reading is schoolwork or feels like school. So it was really important for me to create an environment that didn't feel like school, even though, of course, it takes place in a school. But thankfully, our hall where it takes place is fairly neutral and sort of doesn't feel too schooly. Apologies, there are bells going on for the parents' evenings. And so we arrange it sort of on tables. They have little sort of book talk cards on the tables. There's a quiz going on the screen, which is, it's not a quiz about the book, it's just a quiz about sort of reading generally, so everybody can take part. And again, the children are in their home clothes because it's the weekend, so there's no distinction between children from different schools, and their parents are there, so they feel a little bit more sort of comfortable and confident. And so they sit on these mixed tables, and as you can imagine, the children are, maybe year 2 and above, depending on the book. The conversation is a little bit stilted at the beginning, but as it goes on and as they gain in confidence and as they sort of see that this is a relaxed, they're not being tested, it's not, it's not really school, the conversation really gets going, especially over the activities that they do. So by the end, the Q&A goes on for ages because the children have loads of questions to ask, and the authors were very fortunate. They've been very generous with their time, so they answer a lot of questions. So although it is in a school, I hope that when the children come, it doesn't feel like school. It just feels like a sociable, fun way to engage with reading. And they get to meet some other people who enjoy reading like them, from other local schools, which is a really lovely thing to see.
And what about you as a librarian? How it must be really incredible for you in the role that you're in to be able to do and deliver something like this that's making such a difference to parents and their children. How do you kind of reflect on that as part of your practice and as part of what you do as a librarian?
I feel so fortunate to be able to do it, and I know that I'm in an incredibly privileged position where I am, and that was sort of part of the motivation, was seeing, as in our school, we're very fortunate to have a lot of authors who come here, and we do author events in term time, and I just really wanted to bring those experiences and that love of reading to, as far as I could, to other children in our community. And it's brilliant to be able to do it. We've had some children who have come back, for different events, and the feedback has been really lovely. But I just feel, coming back to me being a reluctant reader, not everybody loves reading, not everybody has access to books, as we all know. And I just really want to do whatever I can in my role to try to bring that love and bring that access to as many people as I can. So we started off with about 6 schools involved. Now we're up to about 12. So we get probably over the 2 years we've been running it, it's been about 350 children who've attended, and we've given out probably the same number of books. And I feel very, very privileged that I'm able to do it. It's my absolute passion in my role is outreach. So I just feel very lucky to have been able to do this, and to be nominated is just the icing on the cake.
Wow. We can't say fair on that. It sounds incredible. What an amazing initiative. And, not everybody's doing that. And I think it's wonderful that you're giving back, if you like, in that way, and kind of recognizing, what it means to be a reluctant reader and maybe how that can be challenged and changed. So huge congratulations to you for your shortlisting. I'm going to bring our chat to a close now because we have run over. I apologise. We can only blame the amazing people on our shortlist and all of their brilliance. We're not going to have Q&A, but I think I'll just close by saying, one, a massive thank you to everyone involved, all our sponsors, the judging panel, for their support. Again, I don't know how they're going to make these decisions, but just massive hats off to everyone on this list. I think what's been really lovely is hearing how important pupil voice is in so many of these projects and in the work that you're doing. Ultimately we do what we do for children and young people. So to hear that, day to day, people like your good selves are building out their voice and what they want and what they need, and what's going to benefit them the most into these sort of amazing projects and into your libraries is just really, really inspiring. So I think I will end on that note, but thank you so much everybody for joining us today, and congratulations, and we look forward to the announcements in the coming weeks.